Hello and welcome to WRUW FM 91.1 Cleveland. You are currently listening to A Different Drum, where the more you love music, the more music you love. I'm your host, Matt Hook. Today I am joined by Thrice lead singer and rhythm guitarist Dustin Kensrue. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thrice is known as one of the innovators of post-hard music, with a heavy, complex sound that has proven influential on many bands within the genre. Their latest album, To Be Everywhere Is to Be Nowhere, was released last year. The band is playing at the Agora Theater on Friday with Circa Survive, Balance and Composure, and Sean. So what was it like recording this album after a 5-year hiatus?
It was great. It was really helpful and healthy to take a break. We'd been going, strong for, 14 years straight at the point where we kind of took a little bit of a break. And, we came back to it still with all kind of the connection that you build over that time, but feeling really refreshed and excited to be making music again. So it was great. We had a lot of fun making it.
Sounds like the break was definitely beneficial for you guys. Now, I know during that break you actually released a solo album, Thoughts That Float on a Different Blood. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I released kind of a proper studio one about a year or so before that called Carry the Fire, and then Thoughts That Float on a Different Blood was a live acoustic covers record, which sounds like a terrible idea, but I've been playing acoustic just shows on and off for a long time, and I've always enjoyed reimagining different songs, and so that record is kind of a collection of some of those that have become my favorites to do over time, and a few that I hadn't done before as well. It's all super stripped down and live, just me and a guitar. Most of it's just from one night. We've recorded it 2 nights, but I think we basically just used the second night.
And I noticed you did a couple very unorthodox covers. Like, I know you did a really pretty haunting acoustic cover of Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. Why did you decide to cover that piece?
I'm always looking for songs that could be shocking in a sense of putting them in a different context, and that have kind of strong bones. And that song, especially I think with how poppy the production is, you kind of miss some of the gravity of the tune. I know I did it first when I had heard it, and once I sat down with it, I started realizing this could be a really powerful song. I'm also looking for songs that I'm going to be able to translate really dynamically to just my voice and an acoustic guitar. So there's certain songs that I love and would love to play, but they don't afford kind of that ability to take it really small and take it really big and powerful. So those are kind of some of the criteria I look at when I'm trying to find a song to cover.
I know you also covered the Tom Waits song Down Here by the Train. Now on Twitter you posted that you're a big Tom Waits fan. Does he have a very big influence on how you write your own songs?
I mean, I couldn't point to anything specifically. I just love his work in general. I think he's primarily a storyteller even before he's a musician, which is something that I benefit from a lot just personally, but I don't know how much of it I actually take up in my own work. But I mean, it's hard to tell a lot of times what things are actually influencing the way you do things, because there's so many influences coming from so many different places. Had you not heard any of those things, you would surely be making something completely different. So it's just hard to kind of unravel where those threads come from at times.
Now, I know To Be Everywhere Is to Be Nowhere featured very politically charged songs like Whistleblower and Death from Above. What inspired that move toward politics?
If you look back through Thrice's catalog, it actually seems to go in waves or peaks or something where, depending on kind of what's happening out in the world, the records become more overtly political. So you don't see it on as much on the record before, but you see it on the Alchemy Index, and then 2 records before that you see it on The Artist in the Ambulance. And so it's just, I'm always kind of reading a bunch, but I'm also responding to what's going on, in the world around. And I think 2015, when we were writing this record, was, very volatile and ended up being probably the most politically charged thing that we've done.
I know you're a very religious man. How does your faith inspire your music?
I don't know how I feel about that term, but that's okay. I mean, my faith is dynamic in the sense that, people are dynamic, and so I'm in a, completely different place on what I think about, the world at large or theological things than I would have been, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And you see, I think what I've always tried to do is be honest about where I'm at and the way that I write. And so you can see some of those ebbs and flows throughout the history of Thrice's music and my solo music. And yeah, I think that's important. I think being authentic in how you write it, and that doesn't mean being, obtuse to people who would look at the world differently. I think the thing that's important to you should be able to be translated into some kind of universal human language, to where you're able to connect with people about it, even if they don't agree with everything you say. So that's what I've tried to do with the music, and I think it's worked fairly well. And the hard thing about it is when you're putting, your soul into things and your thoughts and beliefs into things, that dynamic quality, that ebb and flow means that you're going to look back on certain things that you made and be like, oh man, that's weird. I don't really think the same way that I did now. But that's kind of the cool thing about art, is that you're able to, there's so many different meanings that you bring into something. When you interpret any piece of art, it's not just the art itself talking, like you're bringing a conversation already. So you end up doing that with your own songs, and there's a lot of songs now that I sing and see different meanings in than I would have originally seen.
I mean, I guess that's the part about music especially, is that it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Definitely can.
So do you ever get self-conscious about kind of bearing your soul like that?
I mean, for me, that's a struggle, especially because I'm super introverted. So I think this last record, even though it's a lot of political stuff, it's also a lot of really personal stuff. And I feel like I'm kind of uncovering, some of that soul stuff more than I have in the past, or more vulnerably, even though they're still kind of couched in stories and metaphors. Some of the emotions on there, I think, are much more raw than they have been. And that's an intentional, willful move on my part to make them better songs, because I think that stuff really resonates and translates. Yeah, so try not to protect myself in that, because I think it ends up making for art that's more wooden or maybe pedantic at times, or I don't know. There's getting at the heart of what you're actually feeling, I think is going to make the best art.
And does that make it hard for you to kind of take a lot of criticism of your art, since it's so personal?
I think I'm probably my hardest critic anyway. So the stuff that would hurt is only the stuff that I, might have seen myself generally and then ignored, which is rarer and rarer as I go. I don't know. I think the hardest thing has been for me, like the transferring point between, okay, I've been working on these lyrics, and now I'm bringing them to the band, and I'm singing these on the record. And a lot of times that's really late in the game, because, we're always kind of pushing the limits of how long we can be writing. But we're writing right now for a new record, and I'm trying to let that vulnerable part start earlier in the process. So I'm sharing like half-finished, just sketches of ideas with the guys, and letting them in on that process. And that feels very exposed, but we're family and trust those dudes, and I want to make the best thing possible. So that's been a new experience, and it's going well so far.
It's good to hear. I'm definitely excited to hear what you guys cook up on your next record. So Have there been any memorable moments so far for you guys on tour?
I don't know. We just played Montreal for the first time on this record cycle, and that was a blast. We don't get out there enough, and it's always a very great response from the people. Super warm and welcoming, and I don't know. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
So one thing that I find really interesting about you guys' sound is sonically you guys kind of bring in new elements every album. Now for the new album that you're writing, are you already trying to think of different sonic things you can bring in?
Still at a phase where I really don't know what direction a lot of it's going to go. Kind of narrowed down to 20-ish ideas that we're working on right now, but they're all still pretty early in their development. So we'll have to see where it goes sonically. I do know we're trying to at least end the goal of the mixing and stuff. We want it to be a bit more raw and separated than To Be Everywhere was. So hopefully retaining a lot of the bigness that is there on that record, but maybe a little less compressed or saturated in general.
Now, I'm curious, but because there's one song in particular on your last album that stuck out to me, and that was The Window, just because of that very cool kind of percussion intro. How'd you guys come up with that?
I don't remember what the genesis of that was. I know some of the backwards kind of sounding stuff that's underneath it. It might have been Eric, our producer's idea. I'm trying to remember. That song went through a bunch of different changes, which usually ends up meaning the song doesn't make it off or onto the record. But that one hit a point, and it started really working, and it's one of our favorites off that record now. But I can't remember where the intro came from.
So it went through a lot of different permutations throughout the writing process?
Yeah, especially trying to figure out where we were going to land with chorus, and we kept going back and forth on the time signatures, and then finally landed on the verses being in 7 and kind of having that push, and then letting the choruses open up into the 8, and kind of settle there before going back. So there's a lot of songs where we just keep going back and forth and they end up dying, and we just all get sick of it. But sometimes you find the breakthrough moment and they work.
All right, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Yeah, come hang out the show.
Again, that was Dustin Kensrue, the lead singer and rhythm guitarist from Thrice. Thrice is playing at the Agora on Saturday with Circa Survive, Balance, and Composure, and Sean. All right, thank you again so much for joining me. And now back to some music.